folks, Ariel over here at Nyth, and Burley. Good boy. Good boy, you want to talk to everyone too? Today I wanted to do a quick update on my power system, because over time I keep getting questions about that, and is it still working, and does it work in the winter? It is indeed snowing, very big snowflakes outside right now, and so I wanted to talk about that. This is the guts of my power system. Now, if you are wanting to know exactly what components go into this and which ones I used and all of that, I have, and I'll link to it down below under the show more, I have a whole post detailing all of that and linking to each one and so on. So I'm not going to cover that here, but that's going to be under the show more if you want to know the exact parts and brands and whatever that I use. But this is the guts of my power system. This is the couch just props up here with a little post like that. And this is my battery bank. And it also includes the charge controller for the power coming in from the solar panels, the charge controller from power if it comes in from the generator, the inverter, which takes the battery power and lets it be used for regular AC plugs, things like, you know, my laptop. And a little monitor here that tells me exactly what is going on with the system at the moment. So, everything is still working really well. So I'm in my 5th year here now. Most of the components, like panels and batteries, when I bought them, were rated for about a 10-year lifespan, so I assume that I'm approximately halfway through that right at the moment. But so far, everything is still functioning really well for me, and hopefully does for a bunch more years. How this works, just briefly, is usually power comes in from the solar panels, which are up the hill up there, where people often ask me, what's that power line coming into your house if you're off-grid? And I'll go out there in a minute and look at that and discuss that. And it goes through a little charge controller that just keeps it from getting too much electricity and blowing up the batteries if there is a very sunny day, and it fills up the batteries. Now, if we have too many days like this in a row, let me show you what the weather's doing. If there's too many days in a row that look like this, where it is gray and cloudy and snowing, I don't get a whole lot of sunlight. So, when there's not a lot of sunlight coming in, there's still a little bit. A solar panel picks up a little bit of light even when it's indirect, like when it's cloudy, overcast, or even snowing. But of course, the heavier it's snowing and the cloudier it is, the less sunlight you get. And then also, if I wasn't standing there every 30 seconds to wipe the panels off, they're accumulating some snow on them before it slides off, and so that further reduces the amount of light coming in. So, if the weather does this for, let's say, somewhere between, it depends on the time of year, of course, 3 to 5 days in a row, then I will probably have to kick the generator on. And I have also, in addition, going over that, the solar system video and post, I have a video with a review of that, how I maintain it and so on. I still really like my generator. I actually wore out my first one and just recently bought the exact same one to replace it. I'm still extremely satisfied with it. Go check out the generator if you want. I like it much better than the much more expensive Honda. Anyway, so if it snows too much, or is super cloudy or rainy, though we don't get a whole lot of rain here most of the year, for too many days in a row, I will have to kick that on to top the batteries back off. Down on this little thingy here, I can always see what level the batteries are at. Right now they're at 85.5%, and that is because we have had clouds and drizzle snow for, I think, 4 days now, so they're getting a little bit behind. Probably later today I'll kick the generator on. But everything here still works really well. What can I power on this system? I don't use a lot of electricity here. That was my plan. I didn't want a big system. I didn't want to use a lot. So I do things like, well, even charging my cell phone and camera batteries and such, I often do in my vehicle while I'm driving, because the way a vehicle works, it makes extra electrical current normally while you're driving, that once it recharges the vehicle battery is just extra. So I can often just charge those things while I'm driving somewhere if I have to go to town. So that's usually what I do, but I could charge them here. I also use it for my laptop. Some lights, though, I don't use my lights a whole lot just because well, in the summer it's light till 10 o'clock at night, and in the winter I really like the light from the wood stove and the oil lamps, which I also go over in another video. So I don't use the lights a whole lot, but I have them, and they're nice at times, especially for filming videos, because the camera likes it to be nice and bright. It can't see as well as the human eye. And the biggest power draw for electrical things is my refrigerator, and I have a review on that. I like my fridge. It is electric, and I did intentionally decide to go with that instead of propane for a bunch of reasons that I list there. But I am aware of propane fridges, and there's a reason I did not go with one. So my fridge is, it's in a little fridge freezer combo, and I do cook a lot, and I very much enjoy food, so that is something I use a good bit. The other things that take a little bit of power are, let's see, I guess when the water pump kicks on for the sink, that draws power briefly. That is, I guess, plugging in the little hotspot for my internet. That takes some. And every now and then I use the KitchenAid mixer for something when I'm cooking. Not a whole lot, and that's the only electronic kitchen appliance I have. So that's about what I power with it. I can do the things I want and need and use, and I don't use a lot of electrical stuff. The system is not big enough to turn on some other things, like a hair dryer. Couldn't even, most hair dryers would have too much of a power draw to even start on this system. And anything that draws consistently for a long time, like a crock pot, even if it's a low power draw, anything like that, would draw too much power for the size of system I had, unless I wanted to have to run my generator all the time. But it works really well for me. It may not be what you want, but this system has been working great for me. I can't say I have any complaints about it since having first set it up. Another common question I get a lot is, how often do you run your generator? So this again varies with time of year. If it is summer, it's daylight from about 4 a.m. till 10 p.m., partly because of how high I live in the mountains and how far north. So I normally do not ever start the generator from, well, summers, let's say June sometime through September. I probably don't start the generator at all for any of those months, because there's generally a good bit of sunlight and many, many hours to get it in. Then for the other half of the year, it varies. Even on the winter days when the sun doesn't really rise till 9 a.m. and sets again at 4 p.m., if it is sunny, I do get enough light to keep the batteries charged up. But, as you know, in the winter we get lots of days where it is snowy and the sun is not shining. And so when it does that, as I just explained, or it could be rain, but we don't generally get much rain here in a year. We do get a lot of snow. When it does that for a bunch of days in a row and it's just completely overcast and there's no direct light, then in, let's say, December and January, the shortest days of the year, and often the ones where we're getting the most snow, I might run my generator every 4 or 5 days for a little bit to top the batteries back off so that they stay full, so that I can go on, using the things that I do use electricity for. So that's how that works. So part of the year, about half the year, generator gets started not at all. If we have a sunnier winter, I start it less. If we have a snowier winter or a cloudier winter, I start it a little more. But worst case scenario, shortest days of the entire year with no direct light because it is overcast and snowing heavily, would be that I run my generator about once every 4 to 5 days. So hopefully that answers that question. Then the next question is usually about the solar panels and where they're located. So let's go outside and take a look at that. So coming outside, as you can see, it is still snowing pretty heavily. And this line, which you can see coming right off the roof of the house, is where my power comes in from the solar panels. That line goes up here, up the hill, and right there is where the panels are sitting. Now again, in that first video, I detail how those frames work that the solar panels are standing on. Now I get a ton of questions about this as well. and lots of statements that this won't work and doesn't work because my panels are too far from the house. Well, first of all, it does actually work. I've been doing this, like I said, in my 5th year now. The very first year, I had my panels right over here about where the bird feeders are. And that was nice and close to the house. Now, I never wanted them on the roof. I knew that from the start because I get a lot of snow. And I wanted to be able to access them and clean them, and I didn't want to have to get on a roof to do it. So I knew I didn't want them on the roof. So I first went with them right beside the house, and that worked well in the summer when we do actually get sunlight into this clearing. But in the winter, when the weather looks like this, and as you know, I've probably discussed before that I'm on the north side of a hill, and there's all these trees on that hillside. There's a bit of a gap there, but all these trees, there is virtually no sunlight for at least 6 of the months of the year in this clearing. So I do actually, in my personal situation, even though closer to your, battery bank setup is certainly ideal, I get more power into my batteries with having them up there with the line drop that I get, having them that distance away compared to having them right beside the house, because there's actually sunshine up there. There's an open hayfield right on the other side of that ridgeline where you can't see it, and it's not really south facing, but it's pretty flat and it is open toward the south. It's a little ways back there till you run into that next tree line that you're seeing the tippy tops of, and so they get a lot of sunlight up there even through the middle of winter, which they do not if they're anywhere down here closer to the house. And so, again, this is not my property. I know I won't be here forever, but that has been, for quite a few years now, the best setup for my location. And while it may be less than ideal, it does indeed work, and I do have power. And I am, for sure, getting more power with the panels up there than I do with them right beside the house where they get no sunlight for 6 months of the year. Then my generator, again, if you want lots of details on this and how I maintain it and stuff, go check out the review on that. But it has its own little tiny house here, wide open ventilation out the side that it vents and so on, but it keeps snow from melting down into it. But I do love this little Champion generator, and it is exactly perfect for what I need and what I do. So when I start it up, I just come out there, fire it up, and that goes into the line that connects into the back of the house there, where you can see the lines coming down from the solar panel and the power going in from the generator. So hopefully that answers the questions people have had about how is my system working now, how does it work in the winter. Oh, the other thing I want to address is people will sometimes ask about the cold temps, because it does get very cold here, down to -30 or lower Fahrenheit, and cold does not actually affect the operation of the solar panels. They, from my understanding, operate better generally when it's cold than hot, but they do still need sunlight. So the lack of sunshine when it snows for days and days, an inch an hour, that does affect it, but the cold temperatures do not. The other question that is, cold temperatures do affect batteries. You've probably noticed this in a camera or a phone or a headlamp or whatever. The colder it is, the quicker the batteries drain. That is why these batteries are in the house. These are absorbed glass mat, also known as AGM batteries. I chose them specifically because they do not off-gas, and I knew that I was going to need to keep my batteries in the house, because if I built any kind of external structure and put batteries in there, it would get far too cold. I would have to set up some entirely secondary heating source, like a whole second wood stove, and maintain it, or something like that, just to keep the batteries from freezing and being useless for much of the year, because we get to right around freezing most nights in the summer as well. So that just wasn't going to be a really useful setup. So I needed something that I could safely have in the house and not be worried about it off-gassing. And you might notice there is little gaps in the base of the couch here. That's just for airflow, because if everything's working in there, it could get a little warm, and so that way it has some ability for air to move back and forth. So that has seemed to work really well, but I got lots and lots of comments about that I'm going to die because this battery is off gas hydrogen, and yes, a lot of kinds of batteries do. That is why I specifically spent actually a good bit more on batteries that do not do that, because I knew I was going to have to keep them indoors in a climate controlled environment, because I have no way to keep them from freezing for almost the entire year if they were to be outside. So that is why that is set up like that. And I think that's all the questions I've gotten most frequently. If there was something else you're wondering and it's not covered in this video, or if it's not covered in the post on all the actual components I use, or on the one on the generator, or whatever, please let me know down below. But hopefully that answers most of people's questions on that. Hi folks, Ariel over here. Thanks for spending some of your valuable time watching these videos. Hopefully you found something beautiful, educational, interesting, peaceful, relaxing, or useful while you were here. If so, find more videos here, subscribe so you don't miss any updates, and if you like what you found here, feel free to like and share away so that others can benefit as well. You all have a wonderful day.